and we would like to keep the level of conversation and dialogue that we had in the previous sessions. We have together with us people with different profiles. We have editors, writers, we have Diana, who was the author of La Sirena Perdida. Then we have Bruno Nievas, who is a writer, and editors. Then we have distributors, etc. We have David Fernández Poyatos, General Director of Nubico, and Justo Hidalgo from 24 Symbols. We will go directly to the important or essential part of this session, which are the authors, as your experience as editors. I will start. Good morning. I am here to express my experience as auto-published author. I had a dream one night, and I woke up on the next morning with the need to write a novel. I didn't know where I would get, because it was the first time I did it. I started, and then 1.5 years later the novel was finished, and I did what most of the authors do, which is giving it to relatives and friends to get their first impression, and they all agreed it was a good story and that it would be interesting to make it public and send it to several publishers. And this is what I did. I contacted several publishers, medium-sized publishers, because the big ones are difficult to reach if you don't have an agent. And the answers were very varied. There were negative as well as positive answers. There were some publishers who were interested, but the conditions they offered were not logical for me. So I went online and started seeing the trends in the United States about the self-publishing, because 73 of the authors there were publishing their works themselves, and I thought this would come to Spain sooner or later, so I decided I should do that as well. I started with Amazon, which is the most well-known platform at that time, and they guided me as to how I should create the cover of the book. So I didn't only work on the content of the novel, but I also edited the work. Then they provided me a lot of facilities, because the book was not only sold digitally, but you could also buy it in any other place of the world, not only in Spain, and not only digital but also in paper. There is a trend of people reading digital books, but there is still a lot of people who wish to read in paper. So we had both options. That was a great advantage, and the book could be sold in any place in the world. Another benefit that I found was that the profits were all for me. I didn't need to share them with any publishing house. I controlled the copies that were sold, where they were sold, and where I could reach or where I could get. It's logical that for an author that has just started in this world, if you don't know it, you need to move a lot around social media. So through literary blogs, Facebook, Twitter accounts, I started to make noise with my novel, because I wanted everyone to know that it existed. Thanks to that, thanks to this strategy and the blogs who had read my novel and had made very positive remarks about it, in some months it was #1 in youth works in the platform of Amazon for several days. as the result was so positive, I decided to write a second novel, which in some months was again #1 in the fantasy category. And I continue with this. Some publishing houses have seen that the books were successful and they gave me the option to publish with them, but I continue to believe in my project and I therefore continue to publish with them. I have the whole control of the process and I like it. I like that. I will continue with them. And this is a summary of my experience as a self-published author. I guess that in the time, a long time, there will be more and more authors publishing in digital platforms. You were saying before that you devote more time online than to writing. Yes, it's true. Authors like me spend more time in promotion, in internet and social networks, blogs, etc., than in the writing, in the real writing of a novel. There are many hours we spend online. It is a bit sad, but that's how it is. Is it your case as well? It was, in my case, a bit simpler for me, because she had some publishing houses saying yes, others said no. And in my case, all publishing houses said no. So for me, the decision was much easier in this sense. In time, people tell me it was really a great idea, but it was not my decision. It was just the lack of knowledge or the lack of experience or being naive as to think that I have a work that could be visible and I would like to share it with the rest of the world. And the only way is internet. And 40,000 downloads later, then I saw that some publishing houses approached me. And you see that the real power is, it is curious, but it is still concentrated online, on the internet, through the people. There were 24 Symbols and other kinds of sites who helped me with my novel, and they do a tremendous job in widespreading literary works. And the word of mouth was also incredible. The job doesn't finish when you write the last words, the end, when you write the end in the novel. There is a whole subsequent work that you can do thanks to the help of other people, and who are really the ones who can push your work upwards. And they spend a lot of time. They click and they send you affection signs in the form of a click, and you need to give it back because they are spending time and money, but their click. And I think we need to give it also in return. You commented there is a first stage which is relatively accessible, but subsequently you may need experts or professionals in terms of edition. Justo, maybe you can say a bit more about this. Not only for the distribution but also for the self-editing. Our service is a subscription service, and we don't help in terms of proofreading, etc. There are other platforms for that, but we collaborate, and we also collaborate with that platforms. But in the world of the publishing, there have been a lot of changes. You can see that the last numbers of bestsellers are self-published. Many of them are in Amazon, but that's because they are serious and they are interested. When you have a platform that wishes to grow, as Bruno or Diana are working every day to reach the readers, this is our work as well. We want all the content to be shared, to talk about it in Twitter, in Facebook. We use all our channels to reach the public, to reach the audience, and have them read our works, and we want quality work. This was our evolution. We started as a technological platform, and now we work as we have agents taking a look at our catalogs and speak about them, and this helps everyone. This helps Bruno and Diana in the sense that they will have higher visibility, but it also helps us because we will have more quality books that will be read by a lot of people. So from your point of view, there is no difference between an auto-published book and other books. Maybe I cannot speak a lot about that because our platform doesn't cover self-published books. This is not an intent decision, but it's only because we don't have this possibility to provide guarantees as a good experience. In that case, I think that self-editing and speaking about self-edition as if it were something different is not the key. For me, the key is determining how we are going to bring the whole public all this huge amount of content, and this is important, and that's why we decided to have a subscription model. We believe that the market in general will have a consumer model that was evolving in a different way in comparison to other behaviors that were taking place in the past. I've been there for 2 decades working in this sector, and the vision of the book consumption and the traditional book was contrary in some cases to the normal economic evolution. You could see that sometimes you were having a good economic situation and the book industry was not improving in the same path. And until that time, with the crisis, starting in 2008 until 2012, we had a decrease, an unprecedented decrease in the traditional book consumption. Until that time, we saw that this evolution had happened in guides, in dictionaries, which was reasonably natural, taking into account the sources that the internet provides. But when we started to see the decrease in other kinds of books, when there was no clear competitor in the internet, we saw that there was a change in behavior. And this change in the consumption was around Christmas 2011, and the whole technological devices came to the market, tablets, e-readers, etc.
De este país. La caída del mercado del año siguiente fue del...
Next year, it dropped by 11.5%. The year after, 7%. And this year, the market is dropping again. We are quite aware of the fact that this is due to consumer changes, consumption changes. And this, in a certain matter, should be translated into a different market model to compensate, to offset that drop. I don't think people are stopping to read. And I think we need to take a further step and to take it into account. We need to make the industry change because it's been evolving in the same manner for 400 years. So we need to reflect upon that new way of consuming because this has to have a result substantial changes in the way we operate. We would thus be creating a model that would open contents from us and from other content displayers to our readers. We have the adequate platform that for 60 years has been encompassing these contents, and we have associated with a company that could perhaps provide the technological capability in order to compete with the market, which in the market there are also American alternatives that we can take a reference. I think this is quite a positive year. This year we've worked with a subscription model by which you have access to an unlimited amount of titles through a fee. And consumers have to be able to decide. They need to be able to determine how they want to consume. And if we provide the alternatives, I do think that in a way we will be directing consumers towards stable consumption. So so that we enable a sustainable market. That's our experience. We need to be able to use all devices. We need to find the gateways towards those devices, and we need to gear an adequate operation model so that in the end we achieve our aim, which is for someone to read a book at home, however they want to do it. But we need to be able to reach the broader audience. We need to determine how self-edited books have settled. Short Bosco, which is the author of the Presence book, he is quite well acquainted by the audience, and he is part of the University of New York. He said something that has become a reality. He said that the evolution of publishing houses is really focused on very specialized groups that are going to publish bestsellers, and this happened before the Big Six turned into 5. Now, apparently, instead of having 3 big players in Spain, we have 2. So apparently, this is something that's taking place. Bestsellers such as Clinton's biography or Steve Jobs' biography, they're led by this type of publishing houses. But then we have niche publishing houses that have a brand reputation, Arlequin or this brand that has been acquired by HarperCollins recently. But they work very well at their niche. And then there's a group of self-edited books that are going to count with the support of boutique publishing houses that offer services so that what Diana was saying can actually happen. If I have to do a correction or translation and so on, I don't have to do it myself. I won't have to spend my monies, and I don't incur into that risk. There's a romance novel that's Bellandre, by Bellandre. This person is selling 3 million, and this person lives very well. And he actually spent $40,000 in a translation that didn't work out. So when you're self-published, you really need to think about this type of things. And when I look back, I realize that we have 2,000 publishing houses, and we receive a lot of information from them. And they work along those lines. You can see the good sellers, the niche publishing houses that have done it quite smartly. And then some people are self-edited, and you wonder whether it's a publishing house or a self-edited book, because those people use their publishing house's services so that they can reach a larger audience. And it's very difficult for a self-published book to reach great volumes of sales. How many self-published books are there in the market? I know that there's a complex question, but you were saying earlier that quite a high percentage are romantic novels. The impact is quite relevant in the last 2 years. 50 Shadows of Grey was published, and this started gaining momentum. Many other Spanish authors followed this trend, and they also wrote erotic literature. It became more and more popular in Spain, and on that basis, using erotic literature, now romance novels are not regarded as flowers and hearts type of books, but now it's considered as a new romantic type of novel. Romantic novels are being very successful nowadays, and indeed in many cities they organize events in which they gather authors and readers of romantic novels, and this is becoming more and more popular. In Madrid we have the Ra Encounter, which happens every single year in February, and that has quite a success. Many people attended, especially women. If you'd allow me, I'd say that we are witnessing a change in paradigm, and this was like a merchant train, so to speak. Many of us think about the typical reader who's 30, 40, and we forget about those 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds that demand other types of formats and other ways to tell stories. And there's been a revolution in the digital world, in internet, in the self-edit environment. Perhaps we've been pioneers somehow. We don't really know where the barrier is, the border is between the editor, the publisher, the writer, but I think time adds perspective. And I think that the writer knows how to write and they want to tell a story, but a writer needs someone who corrects text, for instance. And I can speak firsthand here. I'm fortunate because in my case, editing work, publishing work does make my work better, because these gentlemen are actual professionals. You need cover design, you need marketing, and you need a distribution model that's aligned with our current times. Formats and the way we distribute sales channels are not the same as we had 100 years ago. This is a beautiful moment, and it's a bit frightening because of the change of paradigm that we are discussing, and precisely because we're currently immersed in a peculiar crisis. But we need to take all these points into account, and when we finish this journey, we will realize that what we're doing, it's not so different from what we did before. At the end of the day, we're all doing the same, but there will be emerging products. For instance, 24 symbols will bring this product closer to a larger audience. Also, channels that used to be marketing channels will also serve the purpose of selling, and some of us will continue to write. And what we need to see is whether the tales that we were telling will continue to be tales only in writing, or if they will include other formats that are facilitated by technology. Let's add some figures to this topic so that we can determine this. Every single year we sell many million books, and this hasn't changed because we have more formats. And this 190 million books sold per year have to do with the fact that publishing houses publish 50,000 titles. If all the titles published per year just by publishing houses were to be the ones that sold next year, our book would sell between 1,900 and 3,500 in average. So if we add to that the fact that there's a publishing house base that is still active, we would realize therefore that they also have a participation in its 190 million sold per year. So the sales capacity for a book per year could be reduced to 1,000 books. And if we take into account self-publishing, we are talking about a capability of distribution that encompasses a larger audience, and the average sale for a book will be lower and lower. And this is not good nor bad, but all publishing houses sell 50,000 books per year, and only 190 million are sold worldwide in total. So this links up with my second comment. I think there is a concurrence in contents, and this has happened because if you realize what a telecom such as Telefónica is offering is, for instance, offering TV and other consumption alternatives. They make different types of products, and other consumption alternatives mixed together books and music. So we need to take into account the digital side of consumption, which is the one that will end up ruling in a few years' time. There will be an amalgamation in which users will have to have access to any type of content, regardless of whether it's a book, a game, a TV product, or a soccer game. But what happens in our country is that as of today, when we talk about pay TV users, which is 1.5 million in this country, if we were to eliminate soccer from that package, perhaps we would have to extract 95% of users from that figure, the figure that states how many people are willing to pay for watching TV. So content creation, content differentiation has to do with also a bundling strategy. And also the next step, which is what format do we have to offer for books so that we can reach a larger audience, a larger user group. And we shouldn't lose track in doing so of editorial creation, because there's a guy who wants to write a story and there's somebody else who wants to enjoy what the person wants to tell, and this forces a reflection. And in that reflection we will have to introduce new senses for enjoying reading. For 20 years I've been part of the publishing house business. And for me, children's books behave in a different manner. And it was remarkable when Stilton's series came out. It's such a relevant product that it didn't even need a TV series in order to foster broadcasting. And of course, no variables clearly explain the success of this Stilton book. But if we take into account what it offered, was that it actually incorporated the possibility of smelling the book. The book was saying that the child could enjoy the story completely at a given moment. And they said, okay, let's enter the cave, the troll's cave. And you could smell the book, and it smelled just as bad as the troll's cave. I think this caused the book to have a larger distribution, and this is something that can be escalated. Why couldn't a character of the book compete with the reader to determine the script of the book? Why wouldn't you have to fight a character of the book in order to continue reading? This is something that we need to implement. And at the end of the day, the digital market, it's only 5% of total, 95% of our product is still sold in physical format. So if this digital market consolidates and it's enlarged, I have no doubt as to the fact that this type of procedures will be part of the books that we read in future years. But indeed, that convergence between users, readers, writers, people who are part of the industry, well, in that context, we all need to understand something. I don't compete with Nubico, I don't compete with Amazon. Of course, we're competing over a chunk of the market, but I compete with diverse. I compete with Angry Birds. I compete with the fact that you can do many things for leisure. You can read, you can play a video game, you can watch a soccer game, and it's more attractive to play Angry Birds than it is to read a book. So this is why we need to harness the potential between technology that there exists in the mix between technology and literature. You might say that I'm crazy, but I think we could be attractive so that an 80-year-old decides to read a book over playing Angry Birds. And we must realize this. We need to accept it in order to reach this market. Without, of course, forgetting about the literary base, because what we really enjoy is words. But we need to seek that convergence. How do I hook up this 18-year-old who wants to play video games, who at the same time could enjoy reading books that could serve the purpose of telling stories in those video games too? We have very good technologies, and when I talk about technology, I'm not talking about for geeky programmers. I'm talking about people who are part of the editorial world, the publishing houses. We need to be able to think about what could surround books in order for them to become more attractive. We are working along those lines. We have taken the first steps. In a way, we are portraying to users the different formulas that are available to enjoy contents. And there are models. When we talk about a 5% market and a 95% market, how could we compete? Because we are not fighting over the league in the second soccer game. The matter is, how will we do it? Because the traditional book market is progressively being destroyed, and it is happening. So what will we do in order to build up something in parallel so that the formula that we've had for many years does still exist, because many people will want to enjoy stories in that manner. How will this happen? Well, I don't know. Evolution will dictate the way forward. We will be winners with or without this transformation. But we need to be ready for this transformation, because I do think that it will happen. There are some markets that are more advanced than ours, and Juanjo, you probably have more data than I do, but in the US, 25% of this market, the book market, is already digital. if we assume that the US is 1 or 2 years ahead of us because technological tools are more available for the public, why should we think that this won't happen here? This is like destroying the market with a crane and building it up with a toothpick. This is happening, and we need to come up with alternatives so that we can fulfill the user's will to get leisure without necessarily doing it against the current. We shouldn't find the user's will. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that you talk about content systematically. You're not really talking about literature. Perhaps we are a bit behind schedule, and I don't think we'll have time for a Q&A round, but I did want to talk about distribution. How is this going to change? You have very interesting experience about this, about how a book is distributed and about how to distribute also for a given time, that is to say, to purchase a book for a given amount of time, to rent the book. This is changing. It's not that it's changed, it's changing. 21 or 23% of readers read digitally as of now in the US. But there are still two models. Antagonic models have to do with the purchase process. If you like a book, you can buy it. In the physical world, it means you buy it and it's yours, but in the digital world, you just buy a license and you own it. And this has to do with ownership. In the physical world, you purchase it and you can do with it whatever you want. And then there's another constraint, which is what Nubico does with subscription, and we do it too. Subscription means that you have unlimited consumption as long as the subscription is in place. So there's no ownership. It's access to information or access to literature, rather. And in the meanwhile, in the middle point, we can find many options that are not yet settled. But in the US, there's a couple of companies that sell chapters, and this is quite good for technical reads. For instance, you can go to chapter 15 that has the information that you require in technical terms, and you pay for that chapter. Also in Latin America, we're working with mobile operators, and what we do is to offer not really unlimited service, but rather a subscription service that is credit-based. So each book has a price in credits, so users don't really have to be concerned about how much money they're spending. They know that they have 100 credits and they can purchase books for those credits. There's a whole range of options, and this is precisely what the digital world enables. It enables us to create business models. So now we need to distinguish which ones work and which ones don't, and in what context. But some companies that are relatively very big are working on these lines. In Japan, also they do this kind of book rental that lasts for a given amount of time, and this is something that we need to take into account because the cultural and regional aspects also have an influence. We do offer a service in Russia. It's an unlimited subscription service, but you pay per day. Because over there, if you intend to make people pay on a monthly basis, nobody will pay. So the pay is done per day. But here in Europe, we have monthly fees. You need to adjust to the culture and to the possibility. And I don't like to generalize, but in Latin American countries, in some of them, they don't have access to credit cards. They don't purchase using their credit card, but they do have access to their mobile device. So they purchase through a mobile device, and coming to agreements with operators would make a lot of sense, because in this manner, people could have access to digital content, be them videos, be them book, and in any other manner, it would be impossible. Here, we're not talking about pure business. We're talking about taking books to anyone who wants to access to this digital content. So what we have to do is to experiment, to experience this and to experiment about it. And digital contents, be them video, music, books, we need to offer the possibility of testing what fits in each area. If you'd allow me, I would like to make a comment about something that a tweeter said, because this tweeter said, I self-published and I published with a publishing house, and I like better to self-publish. And this is the challenge indeed. Why an author who has self-published and has also published through a publishing house wants to self-publish still, prefers that option? I think there's a gap, and if you think about it, perhaps that person, especially taking into account everything that we are mentioning here, perhaps that person should be concerned about how to reach the potential millions of readers that could have access to his books. As an author, I should only be concerned about writing, and then I should be able to give my content to somebody else who can better distribute it in countries where perhaps they don't have access to my publications through credit cards or through a readers association or through a bundle sold by Telefonica. I do think that publishing houses and indeed some startups have to face that challenge, that current challenge, so that if someone is in this room and this person is thinking, I would still rather do self-publishing, how do we get that person to opt for other options? How do we convince them? And that is a challenge, and honestly, I think there's a lot of work to do about this still. I was reading the tweet and I was hearing you talk, and I was thinking, we really have to work on this. I think publishing a book cannot really be compared, but it's a bit like having a child. Nobody's going to raise your child better than you will. Nobody's going to want better for that child of yours, for that book, than yourself. So, if today we are capable of reaching half a world using a digital format, then let it be welcome. Sometimes publishing a book with a publishing house does not really mean that the book is a good book. But sometimes when we go to bookstores, we can see the central stand with the big publishers. We can see 50 Shades of Grey, of course, and everybody wants to purchase this kind of book. And then beyond those books, you will notice, if you look beyond, that there is literature that's more worthwhile than those big blockbusters, the bestsellers. And you need to come to realize that you are selling books because readers like what you're offering, not because there's a publishing house supporting them. And this is linked with discoveries, right? The word discovery is mentioned by many players, and readers may be able to discover anything that they will because they have many things at their disposal. But when you have millions of books, some are self-edited, some are edited by the publishing houses, so when this happens, what do? How do you get Bruno's or Diana's book well positioned at a store, be it through 24 Symbols, through El Corte Inglés, through FNAC, when there's pressure applied by publishing houses? There needs to be a middle ground. How do we measure the quality of those books? And of course, there can be startups, and something that we need to be clear about is that we are no longer a technological company. Now our task is to provide services for our users, for our readers that are key for us, but also to those people that trust us. And we need to be able to provide services, and we need to foster books so that they can be found. And then users will do whatever they will, because that's what they're there for. And it's a huge channel, but it's also an exciting challenge, and I think we will witness many changes in upcoming years. At the end of the day, we need to be honest about this. A book is good if it sells. You know, if 50 Shades of Grey sold millions and millions, well, let us appreciate it. I would like to be as bad as the people say this book is, if it's selling millions of copies. I think the word of mouth does work, and word of mouth as of today is represented by clicks. If a South American person does not have a credit card, or if a person purchased an Imagenio bundle and they want to read the book on the TV, or they want someone to speak this book out loud on TV, I don't care. What we need to do is to bridge the gap. And if somebody recommended this book to that person, they need to be able to read the book using just one click, and this is the new word of mouth, and I'm being completely honest here. If they place my book in every bookshelf, perhaps I will read a few thousands, but if people don't like it, it won't work. But if the potential reader can have access to it, and it's just one click away, then we will be successful. That's a great challenge, and we need to be positive about this. What happened 10 years ago when an author didn't manage to get a publishing house to publish his or her book? Well, perhaps they could just disseminate it among the people around them, but now there are many more options. At the end of the day, public is sovereign, and they will determine what they like and what they don't like. And I do think that editors and publishing houses need to undertake some work here. And perhaps figures illustrate this better. Earlier on, we said that 50,000 copies or titles are published by publishing houses per year. And I can assure you that they refuse 90% of submissions. 1 out of 10 submissions end up being published. And they probably go wrong in 80% of their decisions. So that is to say, 80% of the sales forecast that a publishing house think that they go wrong, and they only publish 1 out of 10 submissions, and this is reality. Publishing houses actually should look for the best sales of self-edited books on the internet. But no one really has the perfect measuring stick. Sometimes you will go wrong, but in theory, publishing houses, because of their experiences, they read many titles throughout their lifetime, and they have a lot of experience so that they can justify whether the thing that they're reading is remarkable or not for whatever reason. But nobody has the perfect measuring stick. So as of today, there are many projects that have been discarded, and they have an alternative as of today, and they didn't have it in the past. It's a matter of public choice. We also need to be clear about something. If everything that's going to be sold, starting at a given moment, is going to be sold at 0.99, then we will be entering a different dynamics. And the dynamics is that that model will make the sector not sustainable, both authors and publishing houses. I don't know how many people want to work for 1,000 euros full-time in this industry. We need to be able to package things. We need to promote content. We need to find a different digital architecture. 1.5 months ago, we managed to convince Telefónica about the fact that they shall include in their mobile fees a reading service for the consumers. That reading service is bundled with a series of products, and in this manner we are providing users the possibility of enjoying the content. This is the only first service that it's included in a phone fee. No other service of this kind is included in a phone fee. For instance, music services or additional gigas services, they're not bundled. So for me, this first step is something that raises my hopes, because including these proposals in a bundle with fees of this kind, this will have an activation rate which is an X number. And we know that reading is an asset that the audience does value well. This adds value, and of course we'll be reaching a very high amount of people, over 10% of people who have this capability. In the digital format, we need to determine how many people in a family are willing to read on a digital format. We were saying that the market is 5% more or less for digital reading. And we're saying that as of today, if you offer this service as part of a bundle, possibly the activation rate will be over 10%. So we are multiplying at least by 2 our capabilities through this approach. The next step for me will be how to do it so that at the same time we do know that the perception of a user is not the same if they purchase the device. 6 months ago, than it is if you make the offer at the moment of purchase, and the offer would be the same. The perception would be different in 6 months' time. If someone purchases a device, if you don't offer an attractive service at the moment of sale, recovering that user 6 months after is really, really difficult.
Si se ha
If it's gone to the dark side, it will be really difficult to recover this person, and there are proofs for that. Of having the same offers in several devices that were sold 6 months later, or 1 week, 6 months before, or 1 week before, the capacity to sell it will be 30% more. This whole bundling will help the user to have a user-friendly environment, will be able to have a family consumption model. You can continue reading in your phone instead of only on your PC or tablet, etc. That is easier. And this is where we should be focusing on. At least in the US, this is already taking place. I will give you another example. In Spain, with 47 millions of inhabitants, the literature market is similar to the whole of Latin America. It is a complex world, and you can only access to that in big cities in those countries. But if I can have a digital content, we won't have that proportion. In Spain, there are some lines in Spain which can be compared with the Latin American countries. The capability to reach homes in those countries, if we have an attractive product, agility, flexibility, immediateness, etc. If in Latin America, the possibilities will be really multiplied. There are many markets, and we should see how we move forward. But when we start consolidating the digital market, not the publishing market, but the digital market, will start being a reality, becoming a reality, because everyone knows that it's going to get there. Okay, we're going to finish with this optimistic message. We didn't mention piracy, but I'm sorry if there are questions, but because I just was not able to cut them, and we just wanted to listen to their messages, so thank you so much.